It's time to install this Porter-built drop member on this 1960 Apache. So stay tuned, I'm gonna walk you step by step how to install this onto your truck. If you're not familiar with what a drop member is, this is the episode for you because I'm gonna break down exactly what it does, how to install it, and where to purchase it. So stay tuned and check it out. Before we jump into the install, I wanted to share with you all the parts that I mentioned today are available on my website, simplec10.co. That's the best way to support me, so check out the website. It's got more videos, tutorials, parts, and the air ride guide, everything that you're gonna need to bag your C10. Let's start out by taking a look at this factory cross member on this 60 to 62. So this cross member looks very similar to a 63 to 87. It's got the same kind of style to it. This bracket right here for the engine, that is not on the later models, but overall this cross member looks about the same. As we talked about on the last episode, it has a different upper pocket right here. It's not cut out the way a spring would go because it's a torsion bar truck, but it is very similar when you're looking at it from the top view. I get the question a lot, do I need a drop member? And the answer to that is not exactly. If you're gonna bag your trucks following my air ride guide or any of the trucks like Lucky or Blue or Francis, No Association, those trucks that I've built in the past, all those trucks are using a stock cross member in the front, and they just have cup lowers and drop spindles, and that will get you pretty low, about this far from laying full cross member in the front. If you do upgrade to Porter-built's control arms in the front, then Lucky, this has the forward only, not narrowed Porter-built control arms, and the cross member will touch the ground, but for it to officially lay frame, there's about another inch of frame that needs to go down, and the only way to achieve that is to either pancake your cross member. That's where you take out a section of both sides, move up the cross member. You've got to make some configurations with your steering and other things, or you can Z your frame. So Zing your frame is where you take the whole front of your frame, you cut it, and you move it up an inch or two, something like that. I've never Z'd a frame, but you're basically taking this front, moving it up to drop the whole frame down. So that's what Zing the frame is. And with that, again, you have to move your steering geometry and a few other things. So Zing the frame, pancaking your cross member, or getting a drop member. And that's what we're gonna do today. So we're just gonna replace this stock cross member, take it all out. We're gonna use the factory holes, drill a few new holes, and then bolt in a new drop member. And what a drop member does, it's kind of like pancaking your cross member. It's taking the cross member, it's moving everything up, and then mounting your control arms above the frame right here. So on all the cross member designs that are a drop member, a dropped air ride cross member, whatever you want to call it, then they're going to have the control arms usually mounted right above the frame right here. So that's how you can tell usually if there's a drop member. With the Porter-built drop member, and I think every drop member on the market, you have to upgrade to rack and pinion steering, because when you move everything up, it's just easier to have rack and pinion without having to try to figure out your gearbox and all that kind of stuff. So today's episode, we're going to install the drop member. We'll put the bag brackets on there, put the control arms on, and we'll see how much progress we make. If you check out the website, you're gonna see a couple different options for drop members. The first one is the Porter-built option, and I've come up with packages for that include the rack and pinion, the sway bar, the shock relocation, basically everything that you're gonna need that's required to drop the front of these trucks. That's one option. Another option is the GMSS Air Ride cross member. So it's only gonna be the cross member part. If you already have Porter-built arms or chopping block arms or anything like that, then you can use the arms you already have and bolt to the GMSS cross member. That's one good thing about that cross member, is if you already have control arms, then you can just bolt up what you have. You will have to purchase some additional things to go with the GMSS air ride cross member, like the rack and pinion, and then some of the tie rod adjuster sleeves and things like that to make sure everything works depending on your setup. But if you're not sure exactly what you need with the GMSS, then just reach out. I can help put together a kit for you. The last option is the TenWorks full air ride cross member, and it also comes with a coilover option. So they're going to give you the full cross member, control arms, everything except the spindles and the brakes that you're going to add for yourself. It also comes with rack and pinion and everything else. So I've sold a lot of the Porterbuilt and TenWorks. I've sold a few of the GMSS cross members lately. They're getting really popular right now, but just reach out if you have any questions. This bad boy's beefy. So this is the actual drop member. With this lower section of the drop member, it has pre-threaded holes in it, so it's going to bolt in from the top here. It's got your engine mounts here. Those are included in the box. Rack and pinion mounts, control arm holes. It comes with a set of control arms. I got the forward and narrowed arms, and that's going to work well with this setup and the wheels that I plan to run on it. So I laid out some more parts here from the drop member itself, and I'll go over those. We're going to start out by using these side pieces right here. You use these as a template. So when you get your old cross member off of there, you slide these on and the holes become the template. A couple of the holes are going to line up with your factory holes, and then you just drill the other holes and ream the ones to the size that you need, and that's going to let you know exactly where to mount this bracket. And the bottom holes go with your stock cross member, and they bolt into the holes that I showed you earlier. So this will slide onto the frame on both sides. We'll put a bolt in there to hold it into place. You'll thread your bolts in from the top side. That'll lock everything in. Put your bolts in to the side, and you pretty much have the main skeleton of the whole drop member installed. Then you attach the other parts. And here's some of the other parts that it comes with. You get your engine brackets, and these are made specifically to whatever engine that you have. They mount in here with bushings, so it's a really nice design there. On the outside of the frame is these bag brackets, and they mount on the outside of the frame here, and your bag mounts to it on the bottom. It comes with the inner frame brackets, so these are going to slide into the 60 to 62 frame, and then your actual bracket mounts here and then to that, just like that, and that will bolt in and help secure the inside of the drop member to the actual frame. So it's going to come with all those brackets. Whenever you break it down, it's really not that complicated of the parts that it has. The drop member part, the part that slides on that mounts your bag, and your upper control arm, and then everything else mounts to it. Your upper control arm going to mount through these holes right here, your lower control arm with bushings and everything to the bottom. So it's pretty straightforward. Shout out to Porterbuilt with their instructions for this drop member. I printed them all out, I read them, they're very detailed, has little arrows pointing to what bolts to put in there, hand tighten, and then just every step of the way, every bracket labeled, all the hardware and bags are labeled. It's just very professionally done. That's why they've been doing this for over a decade. The original drop member is because of stuff like that. So thank you to Porterbuilt. I'm hoping that you can take those instructions, watch this video, and feel confident that you can install a drop member into your truck. Because I know it's hard to spend the type of money that you have to spend on one of these and not be sure if you can install it, but it's very straightforward. This is my first time doing it, so you're gonna get to walk alongside me. One of the things that you'll want to purchase with your drop member is control arms, and the control arms are specific to the drop member. Factory style control arms will come with a cross shaft right here when these don't have that. You can get narrowed and forward, or factory geometry, or just forward. The recommended is the narrow and forward. Let's talk about the control arm configuration. I get lots of questions about this. I help a lot of people try to figure out what's the best setup. On Lucky, I have a forward only setup. And the reason I have that is because I'm using factory inner fenders. So with transport wheels or anything that has a deep 5.5 or 6 inch back spacing, you'll want to use a forward only arm because you don't want the wheels to get into your factory inner fenders. On Sunny, I'm going to use some of those rounded GMSS inner fender tubs. And with tubs, you can go narrow, and that way you have more steering clearance and you don't have to worry about hitting the factory inner fender. So on this truck, narrowed and forward. Whenever I talk about forward only, the reason people do that is because the wheels, whenever you bag these trucks, they seem a little bit further back than center. So by moving them forward an inch, it centers the wheel in the wheel well, but it also gives you clearance from the firewall. So whenever you're turning, the edge of the wheel will hit your firewall sometimes if you're trying to turn a big turn when you're really low. So by going forward an inch, we get clearance from the firewall. And then also by going narrow, the main clearance that we get is from the outside fender. On these first gens especially, the outside fender, it's easy to get into that. And that's why you have to cut out the inner fender. Even with narrowed arms, you still have to cut out the inner fender. But whenever you suck it in just a little bit on both sides, narrow the track width, then you're able to turn a lot more without hitting the outside fender. Again, if you're running factory inner fenders, then you're going to have more trouble when you move that wheel in and may not be able to lay out all the way. So if you're running a 5.5 or a 6 inch back spacing on factory inner fenders, I would just go forward only with factory style control arms. But if you're doing a drop member, then you're not going to be able to run factory inner fenders. You're going to want some inner fender tubs. I've got a lot of different options on the website. So with a drop member, for sure need to upgrade your inner fender tubs, and you'll want to go with the cowl mounted hood hinges as well. So there's a lot of trickle down effect when you go drop member because you're going to be laying frame. So you need to get inner fender tubs, cowl mounted hood hinges, just to make sure you have clearance everywhere. These lower control arms are a really nice design. They have a flat panel on the bottom. You easily mount your bag in there. It's got shock mounts on it, and also it has a position for a sway bar. So this truck is going to get a sway bar as well. So whenever you get narrowed arms, Porterbuilt sway bar will work with narrowed arms as well, and it comes with all the hardware that you need. And the rack and pinion hardware kit is going to give you the adjustability to have narrowed or your regular factory geometry as well. In addition to the drop member and the control arms, you'll want to get a shock relocation kit. This comes as part of the drop member kit. So these will relocate the shocks on your factory frame to a better geometry. Because if you tried to just mount your shock directly to the side of these control arms to your frame, it's going to max out and it's going to be at a weird angle. So by mounting these, you just mark 3 holes, drill 3 holes into your frame, and you're going to use a stud style shock. So that's a stud up to the top, and then it bolts into this, and you're going to have really nice geometry on your shocks with these relocation brackets. Before we start ripping this old cross member out of here, I wanted to show you how well this stuff is packaged and labeled. So I just wanted to brag on Porterbuilt and their labeling. This looks awesome. Every bag is labeled and it has a part number in there, a description, and then everything that's in the bag. So this is awesome. It makes for doing an install like this so much easier to find the bushings for the upper and lower control arm. They're all well organized and just easy to find as well. So I've got everything there so I know where my hardware is. But now it is time to get dirty again. We've looked at all these nice parts. Let's get dirty, get this old cross member out of here. I'm going to clean up the frame a little bit and grind it down and put some just rust restore on it. I'm hoping that these come out pretty easy. I went through and spun them just to break them loose, but there's a bunch of crap on here. It's going to be hard on some of these bolts to get on the back side of them, but It's not much on these. You've got the side bolts and then some bolts down in the bottom, but they're just really hard to get to. I won't be able to get my impact or anything like that in the ones in the frame, but we'll do our best. Maybe I can get a wobble on it. We'll see. Let's pull this thing out of here. All right, we got the cross member removed. Now it's time for these handy dandy instructions. This is for the level 3 airbag kit from Porterbuilt. It's going to show us all the different parts that comes in the kit: the drop member, the inner truss, the upper airbag bracket, shock relocation bracket, the control arms. And it's giving you item numbers for every one of these so you can find everything. Lower control arm, the rack and pinion hardware kit. Here is the parts installation. The first step, remove factory front suspension and steering components. We are done with that, so check that off. Next is the upper hat installation. So the upper hat is this piece right here that slides on the side of the frame. We're going to take that and we're going to align it to the factory holes. I'm going to put a couple bolts through here just to hold this thing into place. Drop a couple to the bottom. There. Every time I get ready to record, the train comes by. I don't know if y'all could hear it or not, but I took off all the drop member stuff on the front. I took that over to my friend Jason at Tennessee Powdercoatings. If you're in the Tennessee area or surrounding area, hit up Tennessee Powdercoating. They do a great job. They've done all the parts that you've seen in my past videos, those Porterbuilt arms and all the tin work stuff. So what I want to do is just sand down the front of this frame as good as I can, and I'm going to do some of the rust restore and then the truck bed coating, kind of the same process that I normally do. I'm not going to go too hot and heavy with it because I am going to sandblast that all off and have it powder coated, but I wanted to have the control arms mainly powder coated before installing the bushings, and to kind of mock everything up on the front, I need those control arms to have the bushings in them and everything. So I went ahead, took the whole drop member, the shock relocation, everything that goes on the front, and I'm gonna have it powder coated. That way I can paint the front from about the cab support up, go ahead and paint that, make it look really nice, install the new Porterbuilt drop member stuff, and I can go ahead and put the rack and pinion, the spindles, and the Willwood brakes, and put some wheels on here and have the front wrapped up, and we'll be able to have more footage that way. And plus, with all those powder coated parts, I wouldn't have liked to sit here and stare at a rusty frame with new parts on it. So I'm going to go about halfway up, and then once the front is buttoned up, we're going to install the budget portion of the rear. So we'll have the straight notch from VeloWorks, the rear do-it-yourself slam kit from VeloWorks, Alex V Watts link, the simple C10 Watts link. We've got one specifically for the 60 to 62. It's a little bit wider. On the website, we've got them from 60 all the way up to like 2015 or something. Any size that you need on the Watts link, just message me. You can text me, call me, hit me up on the website, whatever you want to do. And just give me the width from inside of your frame rail to inside, and we can make a custom Watts link for you. But now is dirty work. I'm gonna put my mask on, put some music in, and I'm just gonna wire wheel and flapper disc. We're gonna use all the nice grinding stuff we got from Benchmark abrasives and just try to clean up this frame as much as I can. I'm gonna put a tarp down underneath the truck and do a little spray painting with the fan going. It's a beautiful day outside, super bright as you can see out there. Very thankful for that. We've had some bad storms lately, but I'm excited to make more progress on this truck. So thanks for hanging in there. Let's put some music on, get the grinder going, and clean up this frame, make it look nice. Before I get too carried away of cleaning everything up, I need to go ahead and cut off these shock brackets, cut them off and grind down and get those smooth right there, because we'll need to mount our shock relocation brackets when we get those. And then on the instructions, whenever we get to the next part, there's a bracket that goes on the inside that mounts to the bracket that's on the outside. It's a little bit wider than this pocket, so you do have to come in and just trim a little of the top or the bottom off to be able to slide it in there. We also have to take off this. This is from the 3 on the tree, the clutch pedal assembly goes into that. So I will grind and cut the welds off of that and grind it down. And remember, we'll be using this whole front section of the frame for the drop member all the way back to about right here is where the rear back half starts. So all this middle stuff will eventually get cut out after we get the back done with the budget portion, and then we will cut it in half. So a lot of fun to come. It's kind of crazy building this truck twice, kind of the budget portion, the Porterbuilt, and doing everything twice, but it's been fun and I've enjoyed it so far. I hope you guys have enjoyed the videos. A lot more to come. We've still got the majority of that list that I wrote out left. That's been the point of all these videos, to give you guys options. I'm not here to tell you exactly how you have to bag your truck. I'm here to just show you the different ways that you can bag it and let you make that decision. And then I'm here to help you with whatever decision you make. Hey, I appreciate you watching. Let's hop into this, grind some parts off. And if you haven't yet, hit the like button right now. Hit subscribe, that way you don't miss any of the videos, because in the next couple weeks, we're gonna have the drop member, all the front brake spindles, rack and pinion, then the notch, the Watts link, the rear do-it-yourself slam kit. I'm gonna show you how to notch this portion for your drive shaft. Ton of stuff coming up, so you don't wanna miss it. And even if you don't have a 60 to 62, a lot of the stuff that I'm doing here, it relates to all your models. A drop member, besides a few little bolts, this is the exact same steps that you would take with any year model C10. And on the back stuff, the notch that we're installing on the back is basically a square body notch. So if you're watching this and you see how I do the straight notch that's in the back, that same straight notch is used on a lot of square bodies. So you're gonna see exactly how I do it on this truck, but it will relate to you. And the rear do-it-yourself slam kit's the same as the 63 to 72, same with the Watts link and a lot of the stuff that I've done before. Whew, let me catch my breath. Let's get to work. Before I paint all the frame, I'm going to go ahead and notch this top section so that bracket can slide in here easily. And remember, on 63 to 87, all this is open, so the 60 to 62 really has a beefed up frame, having this section internal like boxed in. So even with cutting just a little bit here, it's going to be super strong. We're about to bolt in that drop member and it's going to tighten everything up. I'm going to go ahead and mark the other side while I'm at it. If you're doing a 63 to 87, you won't have to worry about cutting this out for that internal bracket. You'll actually have a C bracket that slides into the frame that bolts in. This is only for the 60 to 62s. All right, guys, we've got this frame cleaned up right here just as good as we can with a flapper wheel, a wire wheel. And the reason I did this is to show you, you don't have to get something sandblasted and powder coated and all that kind of stuff. Yeah, I'll end up pulling this all apart and get it powder coated and sandblasted. But I want you to know this is the first truck that I've ever had sandblasted or powder coated. All my other trucks that I've built were just in the garage with a flapper wheel and a wire wheel and use spray paint that I'm about to use right now. I'm getting ready to spray the frame first with rust reformer. And this stuff helps convert the rust to a paintable surface. This stuff works great. I use it on every single truck. I grind it out in as much as I can, and then I use a little bit of this, and it helps make a really nice base coat. And then I come back in with the truck bed coating. This has a slight texture, kind of a sand texture. It's not heavy, it's not rubberized. Don't use the rubberized stuff. But the truck bed coating right here gives a nice kind of satin sheen with a texture in it, and it looks really good. So this is the combo that I use to make the frames look like they do in all the pictures. And this stuff is easy to touch up. You may be thinking, dude, you know, why are you using that kind of spray paint? This looks good and it's easy to touch up. No matter if you powder coat your frame or not, you're always gonna scratch it or, you know, have stuff happen and then you need to touch it up. Spray paint's a lot easier to touch up than powder coat. Even though I am gonna powder coat this is a tried and true method and it's easy to touch up. So I've never powder coated a whole frame. That's kind of part of the reason. This truck is a lot of firsts. You know, first time drop member, first time back half, first 60 to 62, first Willwood brakes and drop spindles, first rack and pinion. I mean, the list goes on and on of first. So this will be the first one with powder coated frame at the very end though. So after the front is wrapped up, we'll move to the budget portion of the rear end, get the notch, Watts link, rear do-it-yourself slam kit, all that stuff on the rear, and then on to the Porterbuilt stuff. You've probably heard me say that a million times, but there's a lot of new people that tune in to the build and I want to update them on what's going on with this truck, what to expect, because I'm pumped for it. But anyway, let's get this shaken up, get a little coat of paint on here, and get ready to install that Porterbuilt drop member. I know you're ready for it. This has been a long video to get to the actual install of the nice Porterbuilt drop member, but thank you for tuning in. Thank you guys for all your support, watching the videos, going to the website. I hope this is informative. I hope it's beneficial for you. Post a comment. Why do you watch these videos? Is it for the content? Is it for my dad jokes? What is it for as I shake up this paint? Just got back from Tennessee Powder Coating. That's who does all my powder coating. They're gonna powder coat this whole frame. You can check them out at tnpowdercoating.com or give them a call. And go give them a follow on Instagram as well. They've got some of my stuff posted. They'll powder coat anything. And they do great work, super detailed. That's what I love about it. We talk about the project and what it's going on, what items need taped off, what types of finishes. I love this kind of matte black finish. I just think it looks super clean. I'm not huge on really shiny powder coat. Some of it looks really good, but on black, I just love this finish. They did that. They did the control arms. They've done all the tin work stuff that I've talked about in the past. We did tape off a few areas where the ball joints are gonna go just to make sure everything fits in without any trouble. There's a shock relocation brackets. A couple things I did want to point out about the powder coating. On the factory style lower control arm, you will want to powder coat the lower shaft here. You'll want to tape off where these go, but you do want to powder coat that because it's raw. The upper, you do not have to coat. You don't have to powder coat. You can just leave it like this and it will not rust. I just left mine. I like how it looks, but you can powder coat or just leave the upper shaft alone. We taped off where the ball joints are gonna go. Last time we actually powder coated those and the ball joints still went in, but this time we just taped them off. That way the ball joint will slide in there super easy. And anywhere that there's a bushing or anything, you want to tape off whenever you do that. Same way with the engine brackets and everything like that, but all the other parts got fully coated. You'll want to tape off anywhere that there's thread in here. There's a little bit of tape in there whenever they sprayed, but that's it. We're gonna go ahead and get to the installation. I'm gonna walk you through a little bit of the steps. Before we get started here, I went ahead and laid out all the hardware kind of in the order that we're gonna need it. Laid out all the parts, that way I can easily find them. And I'm on this step of the instructions. So we are about to grab the upper hat, which goes on the side of the frame. Grab that, and I'm gonna drop a bolt in it, and then we're gonna get the actual cross member, and then we're gonna tighten down that middle bolt. You'll wanna leave the other ones hand tight, and then you'll tighten down that middle bolt to 65 foot-pounds. And make sure the upper hat sits flush against the outside of the frame while tightening. So let's go ahead and grab those parts and get to installing that. Our first step is installing these upper hats. Just gonna slide these in. These are the ones that we drilled the holes for. There we go. I'm gonna slide these into both sides, and then the lower cross member is gonna bolt to these through those lower holes. Go ahead and grab your hardware. It's gonna take the 7 1/4 bolts, lock washers and washers on both sides. I have the jack kind of jacked up here so I can set the cross member on it. Might be able to get it up enough to get it started. That's all she's got. So before bolting in your bag bracket to the outside of the frame, on the 60 to 62 trucks, you're gonna have to work this into your frame rail. And this is the reason we trimmed the frame rail right here whenever we were cutting it, is so this can slide in. This needs to slide in and bolt inside of the frame, and then a bracket bolts to this that then bolts to the cross member. So on mine, I trimmed the top right here. That way I could go into the bottom and then slide it in. Before, it was a really tight fit. And this is also the reason why you tighten up the middle bolt, is because you won't be able to get to it once you put this mount in there. So we just want to slide that in. Before I slide this in, there is a little round part. They have incorporated this into that to clear it, but I went ahead and ground it down a little bit so it will sit flush. But we'll just sit that in there. The top of this is double layer, so keep that in mind. This layer, it was a little tight at first, but you can kind of smack it in there and then everything lines up. So we'll go ahead and get the bag bracket on the outside with the bolts ran through and get a nut started on the back, and then that will secure these into place. Just to give you a quick recap, the outer airbag bracket, and that bolts into the inner truss bracket, and then there's a bracket here that bolts to there that goes down into the cross member, and that's what ties it all together. All this stuff is just hand tight right now to make sure all the bolts line up. Then we'll come back and we'll tighten everything up. Now we'll install the inner truss support that bolts into this right here. If you have a 63 to 72, then this whole bracket section right here is going to be different. There's a C channel that goes in. This is 60 to 62 specific. It's a different type of design, but accomplishes the same thing. All right, there is the actual cross member. It is fully installed. Got it in there, and the hardest part was these inner frame brackets on the 60 to 62. It's hard to get your hands up in there. It's a little tight right here with this bracket, so I had to pry down on one side to get the bolt started, but I've got it all bolted in there and it looks good. Now it is time to move on to the control arms. On the control arms, we'll want to put the bushings in both sides. They're the Delrin bushings, and you'll need to use a synthetic grease to lubricate. So we're just going to put a little synthetic grease around the bushings, slide those in there, and then push this pin into the middle. And then once we have that, I'm actually going to install the ball joint on the truck. I think it's a little bit easier to install those on the truck whenever they're secured on the truck. So we'll get the bushings in there, and we'll need to get the grease fitting screwed in as well. Bolt those up to the truck, and then we will go to the upper control arms and put the cross shaft in there. Usually you just push in pretty easy with your hand. Let's see, that one slid right in. So the lower control arms that we just installed are different than factory. Factory usually have a bottom shaft similar to the shaft that we're about to install on this, but on the Dropmember version, it comes with 2 individual sides that bolt in. I just want to note that if you get a factory control arms, they will have a bottom shaft that's similar to this shaft here that bolts up with the U-bolts. So the upper control arms are going to install a little bit differently. We're going to have to slide in the shaft first and then slide our bushings onto both sides and get those set. And then we'll use a washer and then a nut, and then it's kind of a beauty ring around the outside that really makes the ends of these control arms look really nice. One of the things I wanted to mention is the upper control arm bushing must be fully seated against the machine surface. Don't get it on there a little bit and then try to use the washers and the nuts to tighten it on there. It'll damage this bushing. So make sure to get it all the way flush before you install any of the hardware. I did want to mention again, in case you missed it earlier, you don't have to powder coat the upper shaft. The lower one you do if it's factory setup. This truck didn't have a lower shaft, so obviously I didn't have to powder coat that one, but you can leave this raw and this will not rust. So I just left it raw. You can see that these are seated on both sides. That's what we want. And go ahead and do the other side. Okay, once we get those seated how we want, then the next step is to put the washers and the nuts on each end. In case you didn't know, washers are directional. Post in the comments if you agree with that. This big boy right here is 1 1/16 inches. All right, once we get the washers and the nuts on here, then this is the kind of decorative part, I guess you would say. All you do is you take one of these pieces and see how that nut just doesn't look that great. This right here will help cap it off. It'll also help that nut from spinning. But then you just put this in there like that. This is where I'm actually gonna put some anti-seize on the ends of these, because I don't want these to seize up, because then you can't take your bushings or your rods out of your control arms. So just a little dab-a-do right here. What's up, buddy? What's up, buddy? Stamp me right here. Woo! Thank you. All right, we're gonna throw this lower control arm on here. As I mentioned earlier, the factory style lower control arm has the shaft on the bottom, where this just has 2 different mounting positions. So we just use the hardware. You just slide in like this. Whenever you get ready to install the upper control arm, you'll want a washer in between here. And then when you go to align the truck, you may have to put more than 1 washer. You need at least 1 to space it out enough to bolt through the cross member. So that's just going to slide in. It's going to sit flush. I am pumped. This thing looks sick. We've got a couple more things to do before we put the ball joints on and then call it a day. And then tomorrow I'll be recording the Wilwood spindles, Wilwood brakes, the bags, mounting the shocks, putting the wheels back on this thing, rack and pinion, the whole work. So stay tuned for that one. Check that out. Oh yeah. It looks sick. Love it. So what I'm gonna do right now is take these shock relocation brackets which these are nice because this is gonna raise up the shock above the frame rail and then use this type of shock. So it mounts to the bottom and then it has kind of this part right here that slides into there. I really like these shocks. They work well. I've got the same shocks on Lucky and they work really good. But we're gonna measure 6 inches from the control arm and then mount that just about like that. So I'm gonna measure 6, make a mark, and mark the holes, drill all the holes, touch it up with a little paint, and bolt our shock bracket in, and we're one step closer to getting this thing on the ground. Let's go. So they're saying this shock mount, the front of it should be 6 inches from the hat right here. So that's about right there. And it says approximate. It's saying that it'll butt up against the old shock bracket, but that's on a 63 to 72 frame, where this one is different. You can see where the old shock kind of mount was right there. The new one is gonna hide that just a little bit. So I may, so that's saying mount it right there. But I think we can get closer than that. I think that's at too much of an angle. So I'm gonna line it up right with this front piece right here. Just line that up and then line it up with the frame, just like that right there. And I think that's plenty of clearance for the control arm right here. I think the closer we can get it to the control arm, the better angle that we're gonna have right there, especially at air out. And also the more we go up the frame rail, the higher this is gonna be. I don't want any shock to the side like those chopping blocks were. I think right here will be a really nice angle. So I'm going right to the front of this. If you have a 60 to 62, right there. And I'm just kind of eyeballing it. Usually I would clamp this up and just drill through it, but since it's already powder coated, I don't want to do that. Now I need to make sure, ooh, see, that's going to be a problem right there. I can't get my hand down in there for the shock bracket relocation. That's a situation right there. I can get to those two, but I can't get to that last one. There's no way. I think I can get to it this way. And plus, when I cut out this cross member right here, you'll be able to get your hand easily up to there if this cross member was out of there. So I may just drill the holes, get it mounted up as close as I can if I can get my hand up in there. But we might have to come back and tighten them down when we get this cross member cut out. So that's hard to get up in there. So I'm gonna take a wrench and I'm gonna tape it, and I'm gonna tape it just a hair on the back side too, just enough to kind of hold it in there like that. Just keep it away from the thread. And then I'm gonna try to reach down in there and then take this impact and zip it in. The key is getting it started. If you can get it started, you can probably get it tight. One side down. My hands are all scratched up, but We got shocks. Let's go. Woohoo! That was a little rough, scratched up my hand, got my arm a little bit, but guess what? We got shock brackets, and they're in there good. So it can be done. You just got to get creative, but woo-wee, those are looking good. Now, to wrap on the Porterbuilt drop member, this thing is sick. All we have left to do is put the rack and pinion, the spindles, and the brakes from Willwood on here, and we'll have all this done up here. But that'll be on a future episode. I'm about to actually start it today. I've got the Willwood brakes right there. Before we get to the brakes and the spindles though, I will have that GMSS cross member video where Tony and I got together and installed that on his awesome C10 and got that thing laying out as well. So hope you guys are enjoying the drop member videos, and we're gonna hop and get this front end done on the next couple episodes. Making good progress. I'm excited because that list over there on the wall has been creeping with life going on, but we're gonna make more progress, and hopefully I'll have Lucky back soon. But thank you guys so much for all the support. I really appreciate it. Just a reminder, all the parts that I talked about today are on the website, simpleC10.co. That's a great way to support me, just to purchase parts. Let me get those for you and let me help you out with your build. Thank you guys. Like, comment, subscribe, all the things. Peace.